Breaking now, as the House passes bipartisan legislation requiring new screening requirements on refugees from Syria and Iraq before they can enter the United States, how are the mainstream media treating lawmakers as well as presidential candidates and the heated debate over the Obama administration's handling of refugee policy? Let's bring in our media panel today. Judith Miller is a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter, author, and Fox News contributor. Lynn Sweet, Washington bureau chief for the Chicago Sun-Times. Welcome to both of you.
Hi, John.
All right, so give us your grades for the week, Judy. Obviously, tremendous concern in this country over Paris-style attacks on soft targets. How are the media doing?
Well, the media are mixed because some people are doing very well. Some of the reporting on the Paris attacks as they unfolded were that reporting was fantastic and oftentimes ahead of the actual police investigation. But in general, I have to say that there have been some pretty egregious cases of candidates saying things that the media have quoted, and in that instance, we have a real problem here. I mean, when you have the leading Republican candidate suggesting that perhaps we ought to have Muslims in this country where identifiers or badges, what does that remind us of? Or Ben Carson comparing some Syrian refugees to rabid dogs. Are the media not supposed to repeat these slurs? But these are slurs, and they have to be called out. I think everybody just has to get a grip. Yes, everyone is frightened, but no, Islamic militancy is not about to take down America, and we have to approach our reporting of this trend factually and without bias, and certainly without impugning all Muslim Americans or all Muslims. That's 1.6 billion people on the planet. I don't think we want a war with them.
According to Agence France-Presse, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Lynn, some of the Paris attackers did sneak in, though, posing as Syrian refugees. Is it a legitimate concern?
Well, first of all, I think we have to, in the press, and I want to just echo and back everything Judy just said on it. But if I could go take a different tact, in the U.S. reporting, you have to break it down to the refugee situation in America, which is very different from the refugee situation in Europe, where in America, people are pre-screened before they come here. It takes 18 to 24 months, while European countries have just been accepting a tide of refugees flowing over the border. Now, we could have a lot to say about the U.S. screening system, and we heard a lot in Congress for people who are critical of it. But the first point, I think, of reporting here is to educate the American public about what it is that our system is about.
On NBC Nightly News, Judy, they were talking about how Republicans are fueling an angry debate here at home. That's a quote from Andrea Mitchell's reporting about the vote in Congress and the refugee crisis. It was not an entirely Republican vote. There were nearly 50 Democrats who voted to buck their own party, their own president, and say, let's put this Syrian immigration program on hold. Exactly.
And that is why MSNBC and NBC's reporting on this has not been good. That headline of, this being a Republican campaign, no. The fear is universal. And the fear of an attack and being blamed for an attack affects both Republicans and Democrats, as we saw from that vote. And what the media need to do, as Lynn suggests, is to step back, look at the facts and say, is this fear justified? Where are we vulnerable? Where are we not? And have a calm, civilized debate about whether or not we ought to permit refugees into this country. And one fact that needs to be reported again and again is that of the more than 1,000 Syrian refugees who have come here since 9/11, there have been no deportations and no arrests for terrorist attacks.
We had Walter Russell Mead on our program yesterday, Lynn. He wrote a fairly eloquent column in the American Observer about the fact that, American Thinker, excuse me, about the fact that, President Obama bears, in his view, some of the responsibility for this refugee crisis, for drawing red lines that weren't answered, for allowing Bashar al-Assad to bomb his own people. Is that point ever coming up in the coverage?
Oh, I think there is plenty of coverage about the United States Obama administration approach to Syria and what has worked and what hasn't. But I don't think, I don't think the productive conversation, though, is about blaming the United States president for the crisis triggered by a murderous dictator in Syria, plus civil wars by various factions. So I think you have to have a sense of proportionality here. And I think what you need to also talk about when you talk about the refugee crisis and terror in the United States is a very big question that Congress didn't address yesterday, is that we have visa programs that allow people in without even getting fingerprinted. So in contrast that to the multiple layers of security that Syrian refugees go through for more than a year, you might ask, why isn't the conversation then about all the vulnerabilities, not just one?
There are too many of them, it seems. Lynn
yes.
Sweet, Judy Miller, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.